To make the 1-inch diameter flute, you're going to need 2 pieces of wood to start. Get them from me. They measure 1 1/4 inches here and 5/8 of an inch here. You're going to put them together. You're going to make a X that crosses in the middle and then connect them to make 2 triangles. We're going to be using this router table and this round bit that's 1 inch in diameter to make a channel down the middle of each of these boards, and then we will be putting them together to make the flute shape. If you look back here, you'll notice there's a triangle. You're going to take the triangles that you match that are on your flutes, and those go against the fence so that the triangle meets the triangle. Before you use this router table, you're going to have to learn, get a demonstration from Mr. Mullet, and you have to copy all of these down and hand them in. Okay? The way it works, the router spins the bit here, and you feed the material in from this side, and it cuts the wood. If you try to take the entire half circle out in one shot, it won't work very well because there's just too much material for that bit. So we're going to do it in 3 shots. To change the height of this bit, you're going to have to use this crank down here. As you crank it, it will lower the bit down. You want about 1/4 of an inch sticking up. Right there, you can see it just poking up. Now we're going to send it through. Before you send it through, you're going to need to have a push stick handy. This will help at the end when you go to send the board all the way through, so that your fingers don't get cut off by that bit. Remember, it says use the push stick when needed. Keep fingers at least 3 inches away from the bit. We're going to do that with this push stick. So you're going to want to have a friend get the dust collector, which is right here beside the machine. You turn it on with this switch, and that begins to suck air through this hose, and they're going to collect the dust as you go. As we feed this through, we have to keep the triangle pointing down and against the fence. You also have to make sure you're in control of this. You have to be hanging on to this at all times. You're feeding this in, the bit begins to cut and pull and twist, and as you feed it, you need to maintain control by pressing down and into the fence. It's turned on, by the way, by this little plunger which is on the floor. You step on it to turn it on. Alright, let's turn this thing on. Roll. Push stick ready. Okay, we've done one pass with the router. That means that we're beginning to carve the groove where our flute is going to make the sound. The 2 halves meet once we get them to fit. Now, you keep raising it and running it through until the dowel that we have, 1-inch piece of dowel, fits perfectly inside of here. All right? So I'm going to keep on going until I get that. Raising it with the dial on the bottom, sending it through. Okay, you've got your pieces routed and you have the dowel fitting nicely in the end. So there are no gaps on the side, and it has a little bit of friction but slides freely. What we're going to do now is make the sound chamber and the resonating chamber. What that means? Okay, you're going to need a 1-inch piece of 1-inch dowel and a 1 1/4-inch piece of 1-inch dowel. We're going to be gluing them into one half of our two pieces. They're going to be glued like this, one flush to the end with an 1.5 inch gap between. All right, we're going to get glue, put a bit of glue on there, clamp it with these. Let it dry for half an hour. All right, you want to make sure there is no glue in this spot here. Down in here doesn't matter too much, but right here where the other piece is going to meet, there cannot be any glue. So either clean it out with your finger or get a damp paper towel and wipe that area out. Okay, one thing you also have to make sure, you should clamp this with these spring clamps to make sure the dowel is seated fully into the half round here of the dowel. Leave that for 20 minutes, half an hour. Okay, once the dowels are dry and have been clamped in there, what we want to do is find the location of this dowel, but we want to mark it on the back side, on the top, not the back side, the top of our flute. So we need to use a square, and we mark the edges right on there, and transfer that around to the top. Now we can put this in the vise. Gently, very gently, because I do too much. Actually, I'm not going to do it in the vise. It's going to be awkward. We want to find the very center of this, so the center distance between here and here. Look, use your eye, trust your eye. Use a finger scribe, which is where you put your middle finger against the edge of the piece of wood, and then put the pencil down. You're going to finger scribe like that. That shows us the center. Now we want to go about 3/16 on this side and 3/16 on that side. 3/16 is about 4 millimeters. So you can measure it. Grab a ruler and measure. 4 millimeters. Just less, we'll go with 4 millimeters on either side. And we're going to transfer that line also down here. This is going to be the edge of our sound chamber. This is where it gets a little complicated. Now we're going to put it into the vise. Gently. And it needs to be supported. Okay. What we're going to be doing is about 1/4 inch over 6 millimeters from this line. Make a line across. Same thing back here. 6 millimeters, 1/4 inch. We want to chisel this down, right through. Take a nice sharp chisel. Start on this one, leave this one until after you've practiced a little bit. This is the one closest to the end. Okay, you're going to, with the bevel of the chisel, that is the bevel up or away to the middle of the hole, you're going to be rocking back and forth and shearing this. And same thing on this side. The wood fibers run this direction, so we want to be slicing them so that we can then carefully chisel them out. Takes a while, you got to be patient. Keep chiseling like this until you get all the way through. Okay, I've got this side chiseled through. You can see the hole goes right through. I'm going to now do this one. Take your time, be careful, go slowly. Just keep Now on this first one you have to take your time and be very careful on the one that's farthest from the end here, because this edge right here is very critical. You don't want to cut and cut that part too badly. Actually, you don't want to at all. Be very careful. Shear it first, meaning cutting straight down, and then come in after to chisel it back. Just pop through there now. Okay, once you're through, what we're going to do is, in this area, we're going to shave this down with the chisel about a millimeter, a little more than a millimeter, millimeter and a half. And we're going to do that in the direction towards the sound hole. Carefully chiseling. What we're doing here is making a little sound, a spot where the air is going to travel. And it can't be too deep. And we're going with the bevel of the chisel down, and we're using that to create a little channel here. Being careful to not slip and hit this edge. So I'm a little nervous going this direction. Could tap it with a mallet. Just to get the control. And as I raise and lower the chisel, I'm changing the angle and determining how much is biting. It's easy to remove more later. Very hard to add it. Well, not impossible, but it is tedious to add. So we really don't want to take off more than we want to. That's enough for now. What we'll do now is to inspect it a little bit. Yeah, you can see, I got a little chip here. That should be all right. But you can see that the air is going to come up this hole and go along this channel and across a little splitting edge that we're going to make right there. And we're going to do that in a minute. What we'll do now is at this point, from about here, we want to remove that down at an angle. So we're going to go chiseling down at an angle there to remove that. Bevel up. Let's get this in. The vise, it seems to be the vise is clamping more over there for some reason. I really don't want to put too much pressure on there. I'm gonna what? Try a different vise. And it may just be that it won't work. We have to find a different method. So I'm making little bites here and just chiseling down to make a little bit more of a spot where air can come out. It doesn't need to be very far back, just small like this. Okay, now we flip it, and we do the same thing here. Just gonna make a little bit come out of there. And then this is the end, remember that's the end. Chisel, bevel up. Just a little bit, like that. What that's doing is cleaning this up so that the air can travel through here a little nicer up into our sound chamber. Now it's time for the really detailed, careful work of chiseling from the other side down to create a sharp edge right at the top here. Okay, we've got this chiseled through. What we want to do now is we're going to flip it over, and the side that is away from the sound hole block, like here's like a pressure chamber, and then this is the actual resonating chamber down here. Yours are much longer. We have to put an angle on this part sloping down, and I'm going to do that with a chisel at about 45 degrees, and I'm just going to be slicing down like this until I get to the surface. And you don't want to go much further. You don't want to go past the surface. You want to be careful to check that you're not making this hole bigger accidentally. And I have lots of room to go there, so I'm going to chisel some more. With this bevel up here now. Little pieces at a time, nice sharp chisel. You can just push it right through. There, I'm to the top now, and hopefully I haven't gone too far. I'm worried about that. But we won't know that until we get assembled and test it. Now I'm going to actually make this a little wider. There we go, that should do. That's your next step. Then we're going to put it together to test the sound. So a critical spot, what happens is when we put these together, the sound goes in this hole. Don't come too close. Goes in this hole here and into this chamber, up here and through this, down this channel. This block of wood gets put on top to channel the air right over this splitting edge, and that's where the sound comes from. A lot of flutes fail because there's air that escapes from this pocket into the main sound chamber, and it doesn't send air over the splitting edge. So to prevent that, we're going to check first to see that we get a good sound. Take a piece of tape and kind of roll it up and place it over the middle, and that is going to seal any air from going out of there. At that point, we put these together, this, line them up, squeeze them together, and then take some tape, tape it together here. This is how we test it. And we'll probably rip off these little nubbies that are sticking out. And then we are going to seal up the edges. So all the way, whoops. Try to get the stick on here. You want to seal up the edge, all these joints, before we glue it. With some tape, and make sure there's no air gaps where it leaks out. This tape is sealing these joints. Then we can put a block of wood on here, bring it up to the edge here, hold it down, and test and see if you get a sound. Good, so there's sound coming. I know it works. At this point I can take the tape off and glue it together, making sure you put glue across the dowel in the middles here so there's no air leakage. All right, and move on to the next step. All right, your pieces are glued together. Now this is a different flute already. This is a leftover the student left,
and you've got them glued together and you're ready to find and drill the holes. You're going to refer to the plans you have. Now, these are the plans that you will have. This is the original copy, and when you look closely, you'll see where the dimensions are taken from. The dimensions are taken from, can I get closer? Dimensions are taken from the leading edge, right where the splitting edge is. So this is the drawing of the flute. And it shows you how far back, 104 millimeters, 134, 176, 205, 233, 359 shows you the overall length. All right. Also, you will find the size of the holes of each of those. All right. So you'll know how big to make the holes. Now, so you'll take a ruler and you're going to be using the metric, which are the smaller numbers, right? These are centimeters and millimeters, and we're going to be marking in millimeters. So I'm going to be measuring right from this edge right here. This is the splitting edge. That's where the sound waves get created. And I'm going to be measuring down the center of my flute. I can make a mark so I know where the center is using the finger scribe. And I'm going to be measuring here. 104 is my first one. 104, right there. I'm going to make a cross. 104. So that's 1 centimeter or 10 millimeters. We're measuring in millimeters here. So 104 millimeters is right here. Okay. Now let's see, can we get this a little bit down a little more? There we go. 104, and I've got a little cross here so I know exactly where the hole's going to go. 134. 176. 205. 233. Be precise here. I'm going from this spot where this is, right? 233, and that's my last hole. The last number is 359, and that's the size it gets cut, which is 359 right there. So that 359 mark is where the whole, all this is going to get cut off. So you cut that off, and that gives you the tuning that we need. Now, on your plans also tells you how big these holes need to be. These first three are 5/16 of an inch. 5/16, 5/16, 5/16. Or the first three from the end of the flute. The next one is 13 30-seconds. It says this on your plan. And then we have 3/8. Okay. So we're going to mark those exactly where they go with an awl. So we have, so we know exactly where to drill. This is an awl. We're going to use this to give ourselves a little bit of a center point, a starting point. This is just up beside the drills, by the way. So put that on there. Just kind of move it around so that you establish a bit of a spot where the drill bit can get into and grab. Do that on each of your spots there, okay? 5/16 for these three holes. Every drill bit will have written on it how big they are. This one, hard to read, this one is 5/16. Inside this gray box, this drill index, you'll see them here. 5/16, it's written, shows you. 5/16, I'm going to need that one. I also need the 13 30-seconds, which is this one, and 3/8, which is next to it. It's all labeled here. Put it in my drill and drill it. Change the drill bit to, what size is the next one? 13 30-seconds. Here it is. If you look at it, 13 30-seconds it says on it. Okay. 3/8 is the next one. Don't have to be so aggressive. All right, there we go. It's a little fuzzy. You can see a lot of the fuzzy bits left over from the drill bit. This one got pretty rough. But what we do now is we go to the wood burner, and we are going to wood burn out the and clean that up. Down inside the holes, when you drill through, the wood will splinter off on the bottom inside. And I found the best way to clean that up is to take a wood burner with kind of a square tip. Ask me for this pen, I keep it in a special spot. And you're going to get in here and just wood burn at the bottom underneath to wood burn those edges off, those little splintery bits that come off at the bottom after you drill. You can clean them off really nicely with this. All right, you've got your flute, you've got the holes drilled. You've wood burned the fuzzy bits on the bottom of the holes and maybe some wood burning around the holes there. Still looks a little crude though. You can still see the triangles where we marked them. And it's rough here all over the place. And it's sharp edges, so we're gonna fix that. Oh, and you'll need to make a little block of wood. You maybe have already when you tested this. And this one's just held on with tape. That's no problem for now. But for this next step, we're gonna take that right off. You don't need that block, but hang on to it because you're gonna want it later. What I'm going to do now is scrape off any glue that's on here. And then I'm going to go to the router to router these edges. Now the router we're going to use is over here on in this drawer right there. Okay, you should already know how to use this router. Before you start this project, you have to learn all these tools. So I'm not going to explain how to use this, but I'm going to demonstrate how we use it on this. Now we're going to be rounding over the edges of our square flute. So I'm going to put it in the vise. And I'm going to turn it on. And router over the edges so it's a little more softer on the hands. It looks a little nicer. Do the edges first and then do the end. You can also do the end on the sander. You can round over these edges a bit on the sander. Touch this up if it looks a little bit rough. You're going to sand that. You want to make sure the edges are pretty smooth. Maybe some sandpaper, or even a plane. A scraper a little more to get rid of the saw marks. All right. Sand the end a little bit to make that soft, not so sharp edge. Getting close. You also just going to use a cabinet scraper to clean up these edges a bit more. Get rid of any saw marks. Make it look a little neater. Get rid of pencil marks. Okay, time to put a finish on it. Once you've got it sanded down and it's beautiful, we're going to put a finish on it. In the cabinet in the back there, there's a yellow cabinet, you'll find some butcher block oil. We're going to use that. Mineral oil to finish this. It's food grade. Here we go. It's probably best to do this next step in the finishing corner so we don't get this oil all over the table. Okay, here we are at the finishing corner up at the front of the class. If this area is full, there's room in the back. At the back room, there's also room back there. It's in one of those rooms back there for finishing. All right. There's these little triangular blocks you put down to help support it so it doesn't sit flat on the table. You're going to take some butcher block oil. Okay, butcher block oil. Put a little bit on a rag. Okay, and rub this on your flute. Spread that around, rub it on there. You want to put lots on. If it sits there and blobs a bit, that's okay. You're coating this with an oil. The oil protects the wood, keeps it from getting stains from fingers and generally looking bad. You can rub this on with your fingers. It's harmless for your skin. So cover the whole thing, coat it really good with oil. All right, it's got to be nicely coated. Coat the whole thing. Okay. Now what you do is we'll put it on this little block too. Okay, get that all over the place. And we're going to let that sit. You let it sit for about a half an hour, 15 minutes, and then we're going to wipe it off with the rag. Okay, I've waited my 15 minutes. Now I'm wiping it off with the rag just to clean off the excess. Time to make the leather patch for our or the leather string that's going to hold our sound block on. To do that, you'll need a little piece of leather and a scissors, and it's pretty simple. You're just going to take a small chunk like this and maybe round it off a little bit, get the corners rounded. If your scissors isn't cutting, then get a different scissors, because it takes a bit of a good scissors to cut leather. But you can't have any of these points sticking out like that there. We're going to take that off. And now you just start cutting about 1/8 of an inch strip. And you're going to carefully work your way around. And what we're doing is going in a circle, cutting a spiral, trying to keep it consistent. Try to keep it thin. If it gets too thick, then you don't get a long enough piece. You'll end up just getting a small bit. If you keep it nice and thin, then it'll be long enough. Of course, you don't want to cut it off either. Okay, so there's a nice long piece. And now you get your block in the place where it is where you want it, and you begin to wrap your leather around, making sure that it wraps over top of itself. You want to keep it pretty tight. This is what's holding this block on from here on in, so you wrap it pretty snug. All right, wrap it around, and you're going to tuck it in under itself and snug it up, wrap it a couple of times. And there you have it, something like this.